Hello and welcome back to the Topic Blues YouTube channel, your source for all things Everton. My name's Thomas Robertson, and it's been, let's say, probably one of the more turbulent weeks that we've had in a while as Everton fans. It feels like maybe we were on smooth sailing, the waters had calmed slightly, but with the news this week that our second takeover attempt had fallen through, I am joined today by Matt Slater from The Athletic to talk about why that is, why all of a sudden a deal that looked so promising sounded so promising. I mean, we've got the friendly coming up against their other club, Roma, and all of a sudden it all kind of fell through, seemingly from, well, as fans' perspective, seemingly out of nowhere. But maybe that wasn't the case. But first of all, Matt, how are you doing? Thanks for coming on today. And where did this all come from then? Was it as sudden as it seemed to us?
Um, was it a sudden? Well, it was very sudden. Look, of course, it was sudden to Everton fans in that there'd been nothing reported um, going into Friday, and of course, the announcement I think was at 11. So yeah, yeah, of course, it seemed sudden. It was sudden. The shock is understandable. Um, in fact, I think even that morning there'd been a fairly sort of uh, positive, but sort of understandably um, kind of cagey piece written, I think, in the Liverpool Echo. Don't panic. This is due diligence. Of things are working away in the background. The Friedkin Group told us that they were going to have a good look under the bonnet, and that's what they're doing. So that that makes complete sense that someone would write that piece, and that's the briefing that the club and Mashiri and what have you would put out. What I can tell you is that it was perhaps a little less sudden for me. I can't speak for anybody else in that I'd got a tip off, I think it was on Tuesday, that there were problems with the due diligence. In fact, the week before, so more like Thursday, Friday, me and my colleagues at the Athletic had started to hear that, yeah, they were deep into due diligence and they'd already found stuff they didn't like. But at that point, it was sort of like, oh, what a surprise. We found some worrying stuff under the bonnet. This was never going to be an easy sale, an easy takeover. We'd already seen, what was it, 9 months for 777. You mentioned it sort of as a second failed takeover. Yeah, it's the second in short succession, but Everton had been for sale for about 2 years. I know Mashiri didn't want to publicly admit that, but I'm sorry, Mashiri doesn't publicly admit stuff that is factually true. They've been for sale for a long time. And of course have been quite a long way down the garden path with the Kaminsky Group. And a few other people have had a good look as well, that haven't necessarily made the public domain. So this has been quite a process. And there's a lot to sort of sort through if you're coming at it and looking at this as a company to buy. I'm sure we'll get into a little bit of this, but I know we've talked about it. There's a lot of debt there. And whenever there's a lot of debt, particularly a lot of secured debt, anyone buying it, you're acquiring that debt. That becomes your problem. And you have to that becomes part of the value of the thing you're buying. So everyone has a sort of, right, how much are the football clubs worth? How much are the Premier League clubs worth, Championship clubs? And you have a sort of a pecking order, and you sort of think about fan base and prestige and things like new stadiums really, really help. Of course they do. But there's a table, there are levels. And it's not a science, it's a bit of an art. And the same thing can be worth different amounts to different people. Timing, people really setting their heart on something. I know we always do these analogies, like the house, right? You'll have a street, you'll have like a number of bedrooms, size of garden. There are sort of guidelines, but even if you go speak to an estate agent, they'll give you a bit of a range. You speak to two or three different estate agents, they'll give you two or three different prices. And then there's always the person that comes along that falls in love with your house, that decides, I must have that house because I really like the kitchen, or that garden's exactly the way I want my garden, who will go to the top of the range. And if they get into a bidding war, they might even go a bit more. So there's always that. And that's the same with football clubs. But remember that debt thing. That debt issue for Everton is significant. It's sort of sitting there and it's a problem. So that's what we started to hear. But we started to pick up that it's more than just the amount of debt. It's more than just we've got a bit of a problem with the valuation. It's one of the debts. and it's the 777 debt. And I will say a little bit more about this because I just want to explain the suddenness issue. On Tuesday, I heard that the Friedkin Group were out. The 777 debt, they've been warned off by lawyers. It's just it's the legal risk problematic. They're out. So I called them and I called Mashiri, and they both denied it on Wednesday. So I couldn't run it because I had strong denials from two parties, the two key parties. And I only really had one source say, no, they're out. There's a problem. And that carried on into Thursday. I checked again. Very, 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 very late on Thursday night. I heard no, they are, and was pretty confident to write it. Now, without getting into all the detail of how journalists do our stuff, um, we agreed to wait. But I think anyone will have realised that at 11 o'clock we had a 1,000 word story that went out at 11 o'clock,
Yeah,
with
and
all
you
the talk
mentioned
with all the
there,
key talking points in.
yeah, and you mentioned there that if this takeover ever does happen, and it kind of does need to, it's always going to be a complicated one because we have this kind of mounting debt that's just kind of spiraled out of control. But we also have a stadium to fund. Now we'll get onto the stadium in a bit because that now has
Yeah,
another part in this story. But
it
let's talk
does.
about that key debt there
All right.
that you highlight, the one that was really the stumbling block. Now, I've tried to wrap my head around it a few times. We
Okay.
always kind of knew that this 777 debt was still going to hang over us no matter but seemingly that the money isn't just owed to them; it's actually not their money. So, could you just kind of talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, because this is the key reason why this takeover, the Freaking Group takeover, hasn't gone ahead. And I'm afraid to say, I think it's the key reason why any takeover by a credible, sensible business group will have a problem at the moment. So this is, I suppose, the concern, the wider concern. So I don't want to go waste loads and loads of time talking about why 777 imploded and why a problem, right? Your readers, your listeners have presumably digested that. Now, nearly all of that 777 money that they were drip feeding into Everton over those 9 months, broadly 20, 25 million chunks, right? That was to fund the stadium and then a little bit of Everton's working capital needs, because that's the other thing that we haven't properly, I haven't said yet, but think I've said in the past. Everton are a loss-making business. Um, their losses actually doubled. This is the thing. So again, the club has been trying to rein it in. Every Everton fan will say, "Oh, net spend," and that has been coming down. But of course, your transfer spend is amortized, so it takes a long, long time. It's like that sort of ship tanker analogy. It takes a long time to sort of turn it off. Of course, you then lost the Usmanov money in 2022 when he was sanctioned, so your commercial income came down. You've been in relegation battles, so your kind of broadcast prize money's been coming down. So Everton have had problems, and I don't need to tell any Everton fan that because, of course, you've lost points. But the loss in 22-23 was really bad. I think it was like 89 million, something like that. I think it went 45, 80 something. So bad, right? So some of the 777 money has been funding those deficits, but most of it has been on the stadium. So 200 million-ish, right? That is secured, but is very junior. There's the rights and media funding, which is that long-standing relationship the Everton board have had with this shadowy lenders from Cheshire, Isle of Man, God knows where, right? So I think again, there's a whole podcast to be done about who they are. But it's kind of like a corporate credit card. Or a revolving overdraft, and that's at about 225. Now they have security on Finch Farm, Goodison Park, the club bank account, the brand, all that sort of stuff. But prior to 777 coming along, I forgot about this other failed takeover, MSP Sports Capital, this other group of US sports investors, plus two interesting guys, Andy Bow and George Downing, Evertonians, successful British businessmen. One's come through a stock market business, a stocks and shares business. One's a property developer. Um, they at one point, thought about buying the club. They actually got ironically blocked by Rights and Media. But anyway, they went ahead and lent money to Mashiri for the stadium project, secured on the stadium development company. So secured on the club subsidiary that owns the stadium, that is running that project. And also they got a little bit of security as well on the shares, on Mashiri's shares. That fund, that loan has been due for repayment from about April. If they wanted to, they could have taken the club over in April, I think it was. Anyway, so you've got Rights for Media, good security. It's not worth very much, but they're in a strong position. If there was an insolvency event, they'd be top of the queue. And then I'd probably say that MSP's security was more valuable because it's on the stadium. Those two secure positions. And then 777 coming late in the day, lending a lot of money quickly, but secured, but junior. So there's that. So anyone coming to the party would be like, right, how much is this thing worth? Okay, I've got to sort of fund some ongoing losses. Look, I'm a bit worried about our Premier League status, so I probably need to give the manager some money to spend. There's a bit more to pay on the stadium. Right, add all that together. I'm going to have to try and knock some of these debts down. And the first thing you do is you look at 777 and go, right, well, I'm going to do a deal with them. I'm not paying them 200. I'm going to get into a conversation with them about how much I owe them. And you call that a haircut. Take a haircut, right? Obvious thing anyone would do. The problem, though, is 777, it wasn't their money. It's never been their money. They've been playing with other people's money for years. The money they were lending Everton came from a big insurance company called ACAP. Now, they've got a lot of cash. They've got 4 or 5 pretty big insurance businesses in the States. But they've been investing quite aggressively in 777 things for a while and have got very entwined, and I would argue they've made some bad bets. And they have been fighting for their own financial survival future for about the last year as warning lights have gone off about 777. So ratings agencies have been downgrading ACAP, they've been downgrading 777 as well, as 777's airlines business, reinsurance business has started to go wrong, started to sort of, big, bells ringing. So ACAP have basically assumed control of all 777 assets. So at the moment, the rest of their football empire is for sale. And that's ACAP doing that, trying to sort of recoup some of their money. We've seen them basically shut down the airline in Australia, Bonza. They'd already, I think, reclaimed the shares in Flair, the Canadian one. They've started to sort of they're pretty much in charge. So that's the first thing. So I need to do a deal on this money. Who am I doing a deal with? Like 777. Well, they appear to be in a complete disarray. I'm trying to deal with ACAP. ACAP fighting for their life. ACAP not in a position to accept anything less than they think they're owed, 200. Because at the moment, that is an asset. It's sitting on ACAP's balance sheet at 200 plus interest that Everton haven't started paying yet. It's all deferred interest. And that interest I'm led to believe is high. It's punitive, sort of credit card interest rates. So that's an asset. And like ACAP are like, no, I'm not doing a deal. Make Rights and Media do a deal. You just paid MSP off at 100%. Well, pay me off at 100%. First problem. Second problem. 777 are in crisis disarray because they were missing payments all over the place and were fighting at one. I did count. It's like sort of 20 different lawsuits. Most of them not that bad, but if you add them up, they're all bad. One came in earlier this year that's bad, really bad. They borrowed a lot of money from a London-based investment firm that specializes in the insurance industry called Leadenhall. Doesn't really matter who these people are, not really. Leadenhall furious because we've been lending to you for years, and you have been using as security your assets, right? Totally normal again. House analogy, mortgages, blah blah blah. Leadenhall finds out a year or so ago that 777 have been borrowing money from other people, namely ACAP, using the same assets as collateral. So Me or you mortgaging our house with two different banks, three different banks. Oh, and Leadenhall also accused 777 of inventing some collateral, of using some collateral they didn't even own. Bad. That's fraud. That is fraud. That's serious stuff. Now it's a civil suit, but it's big. The accusations were big. All the principal people at 777, all the principal people at ACAP, because they're saying that ACAP were in on it. And that's working its way through the New York courts. So, person coming to Everton, there's that number there that I need to deal with, that I want to deal with. Any sensible person will deal with it. But who's it now? So it's not 777, it's ACAP. Oh, what? But Leadenhall are claiming that they actually have all the assets. There's an ongoing legal dispute in New York. So when are we talking now? So Monday. About 10 days ago, a bit more actually, there was supposed to be what is almost a last chance for a resolution. I think it's called a conference settlement in this New York court. The day came and went. There was no resolution. Because if there was a resolution, we wouldn't be doing this podcast. So ACAP have not done a deal with Leadenhall. That is still a live dispute. So that's a massive problem for anyone going, not only do I want to do a deal, who am I doing a deal with? Even if I can't do a deal, who am I even talking to? Who owns that? Who owns that loan? Is there another party that's going to come out of the woodwork? Because everything my lawyers, everything my due diligence experts are telling me about 777 is that it was chaotic. There could well be criminal charges after this civil suit is settled because Leadenhall are alleging criminality. So then you start to sort of, a lawyer would say, not only have you got a bit of a problem about who you're talking to and who you might become almost a partner with, whether you like it or not for a while, that loan could be the proceeds of crime. Because that's what Leadenhall is saying. So you have to sort of think, then it becomes a bit like buying that house, right? And you get indemnity insurance against some problem in your house that you can't really sort of resolve yet, but I'll cover you. I'll pay for some insurance just in case, I don't know, you are liable to fix that fence over there, or I don't know, there's something in your area that needs like a big problem. So you just get some indemnity insurance, the roof, I don't know. Um, it's really hard to indemnify someone for something so uncertain as potential criminality on a massive scale. That's a problem. So the way to wrap this all up is the only really way anyone to proceed at Everton right now is almost to go to the court in New York and say, look, I know you've got this situation, you've got these litigants, they're all, banging heads. I'm going to put in an escrow account, I'm going to put the full amount plus the full amount of interest. And I'm just going to say to you, Judge, you're in charge. Can we walk away? Are me and you good? Right? But that is parking 220 plus million over there. Whilst you then carry on at Everton and you go, well, I've just paid 200 million to pay off MSP, which by the way, the Friedkin Group have, because they had to. That was one, it was a condition of the Premier League approval process. And they needed to bump MSP's security off the stadium company because they're interested in the stadium. So they've paid 200 million. So MSP are now out of the picture. They've had their money. We can at least forget about that MSP, that confusion. As part of that 200, of course, they've actually just paid Lang O'Rourke's latest bill. So they've just chipped a little bit more off the stadium. Good. That's good. Mashiri has once again managed to get somebody else to pay for the stadium. But it hasn't, but the picture's still the same. 200-ish, it's 200 million to 777, 225 to Rights of Media, 200 to Friedkin Group, 450 in shareholder loans to Mashiri, which we can forget about. That's money that's just gone. He knows it's gone. So you got sort of 600 million plus of interest bearing third party secured debt. That's Everton's dilemma. I'm sorry that was a long answer, but that's the dilemma.
Yeah, I find myself kind of smirking and laughing at this, even though it's a very serious matter. I find it just this point hilarious, kind of the mess that we've ended up in. And I think back to Mashiri telling us all at the start of the 777 takeover that they're the best people for the job. That I'm confident that they're the best people to take the club forwards. But as you say, we now end up in this position. I guess you offered a resolution there. You said whoever would be daft enough to come look at the club now, can put that money in an escrow account, and then the judge can kind of decides where it goes. Is there any other way around that problem? I guess the conclusion of that case, but that's
Yeah,
who
yeah, yeah.
knows
No, well,
when that'll be.
that is that. Look, if we're going to do silver linings of positivity, right? So someone who could like the falling in love with the house on the street could fall in love with Everton, could become convinced, and people have. This has been the pitch for a while that when is the next time a club of Everton's stature and its fan base going to come along? There aren't many of them, right? Scarcity value. When are they going to come along with a brand new stadium that someone else has pretty much paid for? That's the sales pitch that Mashiri and Mashiri's people have been running around for 2 years with. And it's not a bad sales pitch. It's not bad. It's just someone then will go, okay, so let me just oh right, that's already right at the top of the valuation range. And my concern has always been scarcity value is a very subjective thing. If someone falls in love with Everton, was it 8 times champions, founder members of the English Football League, co-creators of the Premier League, your amazing record of staying in the top flight, all those things, right? Senior club in Liverpool, lots of good stuff. But there are also lots of other Premier League clubs for sale. And that's what's, again, what was hurt the time. It's what's hurting Everton. Spurs have been unofficially for sale for a while. There's certainly a deal to be done there on a big minority stake. And a lot of external Americans, Gulf people, they want to be in London. They do. There's a sort of cachet of London, the South. Um, they've got an amazing stadium. There's a big minority stake for sale at West Ham, London. It's not an amazing stadium. It's a pretty good stadium, but it's an iconic stadium. It's a well-known stadium. Sweetheart deal at that stadium. Brentford are for sale, fully for sale. They've got a brand new stadium. Small, cute, limited upside, but Brentford, they're a Premier League club. Wolves are unofficially for sale. Mention Everton. There's another one that's name escapes me, but there's about 4 or 5 Premier League clubs that are actively for sale or stakes are available in them, big stakes. So someone who just wants the Premier League club, as opposed to wants Everton, be thinking, well, Everton, I like a lot of what I'm seeing and reading, but do I like it enough to pay over the odds and to also just get into this, unnecessary legal stuff with these people I don't really want anything to do with, frankly. So that's a concern. But you're right. Someone could say, I love it, and I'm quite happy to park that 220, whatever it is, 225-ish over there to resolve that. Because you never know. It could all be resolved. And I could actually do a deal with Leadenhall or ACAP, the winners of that dispute, and knock them down a bit. Or, that case could be resolved one way or another pretty quickly. Leadenhall could win, ACAP could win. It's all the same thing, right? There can be a resolution there, so that legal risk goes away. Maybe there is no proceeds of crime issue. And maybe that's just one lawyer whose job it is to worry, is worrying too much. So there are things that can happen that positively change stuff, but I just worry at the moment it's just too problematic. It's just too expensive, too problematic. There's too much uncertainty. People hate uncertainty, and I go back to is there really scarcity at the moment? There are options.
Yeah, so now I feel like we've kind of got to the bottom now of why the Friedkin Group's takeover kind of fell apart, and maybe why another one will be ultimately
Oh,
unsuccessful as
sorry, you've
well.
just
So
reminded me that. So I probably should add. I mean, again, on the silver linings point, and people have raised this. The Freakings kind of did this when they bought Roma a few years ago. They pulled out and then they came back
that's what I
about
was just about
seven.
to get onto.
Right.
Yeah.
So there you go. So and they are now existing. They're lenders. They have skin in this game. They've already committed 200 million. So there is a way out of this.
Yeah, and so as you mentioned, they've now taken over MSP's debt. MSP could have taken a majority stake in the club. They clearly had absolutely no interest in them in that, and I don't blame them for that. But now MSP are out of the picture. we've known that they were never particularly interested. The Friedkin Group have taken over that debt. So I'm sure people will kind of have questions now. Will we? Because obviously the language that is used in press releases, it's all very nice. Everyone's kind of best friends. We'll all get along. But is that necessarily the case? Will it get to a point where the Friedkin Group are going to want this money back? Will they continue to lend the club more money like 777? What do you see coming of that debt now?
I don't see them lending more. I see them being pretty happy well, happy is probably the wrong word, being okay at sitting where they are because they've actually got better security. Um, well, I say better. It looks and sounds better than MSP had. So just to explain that point, they have security on all of Mashiri's shares. So they 94% he owns. They've got security on the ownership vehicle he used called Blue Heaven. Um, so I think that obviously haven't publicly said this. The terms of the loan is about a year, so they're probably quite happy to sort of sit for a while just to sort of see how this pans out. They could sitting there be thinking in a year's time we could assume control of stadium and club. Now don't forget though, and people have gone, well, isn't that really clever and isn't that really good news? Yes, it's clever in that they've got more security and it's potentially good news. But don't forget that MSP could have done this in April. And the way that those two people, MSP and Freakin, are looking at this is broadly similar. They're very cognizant of the fact that they're acquiring debt as well. So they would then become responsible for that 777 issue, as well as the rights of media funding, who appear to be quite relaxed to wait because they're getting regular interest payments. And also that 225, I think, is scheduled to come down a bit anyway. They have some security on some incoming transfers and some Premier League money and what have you. So I think the rights of media funding debt is already sort of scheduled to fall a bit. And they have been like long term lenders to Everton. And also, again, I'm making this more complicated than perhaps it needs to be. All of these lenders who are kind of in the business of lending money to football clubs, of which rights of media are in that business, they don't want to end up owning football clubs for a couple of reasons. One, it means they have to stop lending to other football clubs, so they have to get out of the business of lending money to football clubs, which they don't want to do. And also, it would kind of imply that they have made a bad bet, that they've sort of shut down a club, they've assumed control. That would send a very bad message to the market. Oh God, they're a bit aggressive. Um, so rights of media are less of a problem for Everton and for any sort of future, new person to the table. They are very clearly people you can do business with, is my point. So they would be open to conversations and we could work with them, long-term partners. 777 ACAP, no, because of their whole legal nightmare. And Leadenhall, if they end up winning, don't want a football club. They'd want to sort that out straight away. Um, so there are ongoing worries. And again, it's just that, what are Everton really worth? Can I do? Can I work through these debt issues? And I think the thing that helps, a couple of things help. One, you're a Premier League club, good. So last year was a potential crisis with the points deficits and coming into that season without really kind of refreshing the team. But Dyche got them playing and actually ended up pretty safe in the end. So that's good. We're not expecting another points deficit penalty this season. Um, I don't think you finish selling players, I'm afraid, because I think there is, whilst it is true, and again, the immediate briefing the club put out to friendly journalists around the 11 o'clock announcement was, first of all, we're fine. We've got loads of cash. It's kind of true. They probably have got loads of cash because nearly every club has loads of cash at this time of year. Season tickets, they've just had a big installment of Premier League money, and they have sold a few players. The crunch for all clubs, the first time all clubs start to worry about cash is sort of September-ish. So, that's it's perfectly true that they're okay now. I'd be starting to think about the autumn. So, where does this leave Everton? Here's a scenario. I'm just going to throw this out there. because I've really been thinking about this for perhaps a bit longer than most, at least a week now. Like, what next? And I'm starting to think that maybe Bashiri's just thinking, I hold on. I'm sorry, you're almost now at the mercy of things totally beyond the realms of football. Things like a Trump presidency and a resolution to the Ukraine war and the return of Usmanov money. It's sort of I'm starting, what would change the picture positively for Mashiri and Everton, or for Mashiri? It would be something like that. It would be access to his money in Russia again, his friends in Russia again. It's this is not the sort of stuff we should be talking about on football podcasts. Or
Mm.
is, as I said, that person that goes, no, I want Everton. How much does it cost? Right, fine. Oh, even if it's 25% above what people are telling me it's really worth, I want Everton. Because, and that's as the stadium gets more and more finished, I think it becomes something you can sort of show people and say, no, seriously, we are a Premier League club. Maybe we'll know more at Christmas because if the team will have started well, look, we're going to be in the Premier League next year and we're going to be moving into that stadium and it's going to be the story of certainly the first weekend, right? And it's going to be the story of that season, our first season in our brand new iconic waterfront stadium. And everyone that comes to visit will be their first visit. So the Man United game, the Liverpool game, all those games will be big and there'll be like stories around the world. Yeah, good, compelling story. Maybe that's what saves you.
Matt, thank you very much for your time. I think, look, overall, this is a setback, but there's still so many moving parts in this story. And I mean, last time before, the Friedkin Group um, ended up with exclusivity, there seemed to be a queue of buyers. I'm sure some people will come back out the woodwork. The
Yeah,
press are already
yeah.
being briefed on that already. So we'll have to see how that develops. But thank you very much for your time anyway. Thank you for explaining that for us.
No problem. Sorry, it's not better news.
Well, I think we're fairly used to this kind of news at the moment. But thank you all very much for watching. Be sure to check out The Athletic and Matt's article about this. Let's hope there will be some sort of resolution to this. Let's just get into the new season now. Yeah, it's not overwhelmingly positive. Don't get me wrong, but as I said, plenty of moving parts. Something could still happen out of nowhere. Someone could just absolutely fall in love with the club, as Matt said, and we could find a resolution. So, as I mentioned, thank you all very much for watching, and join us next time on the Toffee Blitz.